is to go off script, to improvise, freestyle, or act on instinct. Hi, welcome back to another episode with Adlib with Liv. I'm your host, Liv. And I took 2 weeks off from filming and podcasting. And there was a few reasons for that, but I'm excited to be back. I think it's kind of a nice reminder that sometimes we need to step away from something that we're doing consistently and look at it from a different perspective, take a little bit of space. It just gives you an opportunity to really consider the intention of what you're doing and the direction that you're going. So I realized I just had kind of a lot of energy and a lot of like mental processing that I was doing the last 2 weeks, so many downloads and realizations. And I was just going through a lot and I really didn't know what the next step was and how to continue the next episode that would have published last week. And so I thought, okay, it's a holiday week coming up. Everyone's kind of getting offline and hopefully getting offline and spending time with family and friends and going to parties and events and cooking and, you know, a lot of those kind of traditional things that we do this time of year. And I thought, okay, great. I'm going to give the podcast a little bit of space and jump back in when I'm, for the following week, which would be today. So during that little break that I gave myself, of course, comes with it so much just processing around how do I want to move forward with this podcast, this new project that I'm creating, these new conversations that I'm having, that I'm sharing openly with people, for the first time in this way. And I think the biggest thing that I came to realize, especially after doing a lot of those elemental practices that I talked about in the previous 2 episodes, which if you haven't listened to, those are some of my favorite because they're so kind of grounded in the type of work that I find so meaningful and the kind of work that I am realizing is what I want to continue moving towards, which are practices that connect us back to ourselves. That's so important to me because I do it first for myself, and then I'm realizing how powerful it is to share those practices and to hear other people's practices and just create more conversation around what we're doing to like stay centered and stay grounded and to also push our envelope and to get out of our comfort zones. I'm interested in that kind of work and that kind of play because I'm reframing it to not be work. And so there's this energy around those last 2 episodes that I published that I really want to carry forward through the rest of the year and publishing different episodes. So if you haven't listened to those, please go and listen to them and bring a notepad and, take some notes and do some processing around your own elemental practices that you want to step into. Now's a great time because it's the last month of the year officially, oficialmente es diciembre 1. Y yeah, it's really a nice time to like shift into the changing seasons and also shift into the changing year because as much as time is a construct, it's a new year and I know we all feel it. And I know that this relationship to time is really linear for a lot of us. And it's just that's how we're wired into that system. And so it's a really good time to just acknowledge, what went down in 2025 and what are we stepping into in 2026 and how do we want to move into this year? So while I was doing my own elemental practices, which included filling my house with flowers and roses specifically and lilies. Lilies bring a really sensual, romantic aroma, and I have them in the bedroom. And then I brought roses into the kitchen and I would stop and I would smell them every day. And then once the roses started to molt and die, because, first of all, this is why I don't buy roses. They last for like 2 days. And I find that to be kind of annoying when you spend money on flowers. I'm like, okay, can we give it a week here? No. So the flowers molted after just a few days, but instead of throwing them away, I took about 6 or 7 roses and I peeled each individual petal off of each flower. And I had them all laid out on the table and they were like this mosaic of yellows and pinks, dark pinks around the edges and softer pinks in the middles. And then I did a little mandala on my credenza over here. So I took each petal and I created kind of a snake shape. And it was a little bit of a study on life and death. And I wasn't expecting it to be that, but it really quickly became that. I think the energy from my Dia de Muertos ofrenda altar was kind of carrying over because I'm very tuned into living these days and all the excitement and emotions that come with that. And then also really tuned into death because the two dance together. We can't have one without the other. So I explored this theme while I was laying out the petals, and I just kind of noticed how the petals were molting and drying the same way that our bodies kind of molts and dry as we age, and they start to wrinkle and they lose their elasticity and their sort of lusciousness and softness. In a way, I still think an aging body is beautiful. Not that it loses all of its vitality, but that vitality fades and shifts. And so I noticed that in the flowers, and I was, kind of bringing in some memories of people that I've lost and how, I have seen death firsthand. I've been was with my grandfather when he took his last breaths. I was at the foot of his bed with his feet holding them and watching his body, take those last breaths in this life. And so I know what death can look like, one version of death. And the flowers really spoke to me in that way. So that was a powerful study. And then I've also been choosing to go out and sit in nature to do my journaling and my writing and my processing. So I went to the park a couple times, took my shoes off, let the sun hit my skin, and just really felt grateful for being able to escape to nature, even in a big city like this. Mexico City is a massive, sprawling concrete city, but luckily it also has an amazing amount of parks and trees and beautiful wildlife. So I've been taking time to do that and to let my writing be supported by the earth herself, very literally. I have also been just tuned into my intimacy and how I have looked at intimacy in the past and how I view it now and how I want to deepen that connection. And that might sound really abstract, right? But I think like another way to frame this is asking questions around what am I leaning into and what am I tapping out of? What relationships am I seeking to deepen and to take a little bit further? And which ones am I finding myself kind of loosen my grip on and say, you know what? That's not where I want to put my energy. Or also, if it is getting too deep or too intimate too quick, asking myself, okay, is this actually as far as I want to? Do I want to go this far or do I want to take a step back? And these are romantic relationships, platonic relationships, friendships, work dynamics, family dynamics, and also our relationship to ourselves, because that's where it starts. I mentioned a woman named Anya, and I'm going to say her last name wrong. It's spelled Zoltowski, but it's Joltowski, Polish last name. So I should know how to say it because I'm also Polish, but I don't have an understanding of the language at all. But she was mentioned in a previous podcast, and she's someone who her voice has just kind of been in my mind the last month. And we actually did a workshop yesterday that was really powerful that I'll share a little bit about in this episode. But I really want to get into this idea of intimacy and what that looks like. And I guess, connecting Anya to it, she talks about sustainability of the self being the most important thing if you're going to be working in sustainable spaces, because she's coming from, she works in sustainable textiles and kind of working on reshaping the way we create textiles and the way we consume textiles and all the things that come with that, which is really powerful work because we all depend on textiles for everything. It makes up so much of our world, and yet it's a very extractive and very problematic industry. So she explores, her work is mostly through a textile lens, but she applies it to creatives, change makers, as well. So that was where I was like, okay, I can fit into this conversation. Like I can contribute. So her idea of sustainability of the self being just as important as stepping into sustainable spaces, whether that's agriculture, design, fashion, all the things, we have to really focus on how we're taking care of ourselves first. And I'm someone who just has always naturally been a very good caretaker of myself and of other people. You know, when I have that opportunity to, I feel like I really do like to caretake and make people feel good and cared for. Yeah, but it really does start with yourself. And that's something I have really invested in because I have chosen to be single for about 10 years. And when I say single, I mean not celibate, not talking to people, you know, not completely shut off, but really more curious about my experience and my journey to the self, through the self, before focusing on a lot of relationships outside of myself. Romantic partnerships specifically, you know, definitely have been focused on friendships and building connection and community. But as far as like romantic partnerships go, that just hasn't been a priority for me. And that'll also be a part of this conversation today, is where those relational partnerships are actually such a point of healing for us and such a point of exploration. So I'm actually like really opening up to that idea for the first time in a really long time, which feels great. You know, it feels great because I've done a lot of interpersonal work. So now I can like kind of confidently step into relationships outside of myself. But let's talk about intimacy and sustainability with the self. So the elemental practices that I offered to you guys as prompts to get connected with included getting connected with water, wind, earth, and fire. And those are the elements that make up our worlds, and they make up us, and we are the elements. So getting connected to the elements is ultimately getting connected to ourselves. So me going out and sitting in a park and writing from a place of being grounded physically and listening to the birds and feeling the breeze and, you know, being very physically connected is an opportunity to deepen my connection with myself. My writing is different when I'm in nature. My appreciation for my physical body, my health, my ability to move and to bike and to do yoga and to be in practice in this earth is all inspired by my connection to the elements. So that has led me to looking at deeper parts of myself more intimately. And I knew that this would come up because when we invite introspection into our lives and we put that as an intention, all of a sudden we start to realize where we've been leaning in and where we've been tuning out. And so I have had so many downloads, like I said, about where I want to go deeper with myself and also with the relationships around me. And one major thing that I discovered that I think will be really relatable to people is that I am seeking relationships that offer me a deeper connection to myself. What does that mean, Liv? Okay, I'll tell you. Fine. Twist my arm. So when we are creating relationships with people, maintaining relationships, all the things, we are either kind of outsourcing our energy to maintain certain dynamics, meaning we're sort of changing who we are or changing the way we speak or changing the way we do things in order to fit those relationships into our lives. And that's not always a bad thing, to change and evolve and to shift, because we need to make space for people. We, you know, sometimes that it really is required to shift where we're at in order to include more people and to include certain relationships, and to be flexible with how those relationships flow into our lives. And there's also kind of a negative side to it where we find ourselves accommodating people in a way that is like self-sacrificing, and we're giving up our autonomy and our sovereignty and our truth in order to make other people more comfortable, or to maybe because we want a relationship to work. So we just kind of mold ourselves a little bit to make it work, to make it easy for them so they want to be around us, just as an example. And you know, those can be subtle things. I've noticed that like this intimacy work is all about the subtleties. And so I think for me, getting to look at my relationships from that aspect it's like really powerful work, because all of a sudden you're looking at what that person kind of ignites in you and what they might be depleting from you. And again, it's not always about like take, like what is this person giving me and reflecting back to me. I don't want it to come across as that, because it's not. It's a mutual dynamic of synergy and connection. But I also believe in stepping into our truth and our whole selves as our deepest work, at least my deepest work. I want to know myself so well that when I do step into situations, I can be so discerning that I know what conversations are depleting and what conversations are nourishing, and what relationships ignite me and what relationships feel kind of out of alignment. And that's relationships with other people, but it's also relationships with the place that we're in, with the elements that we're in, with the community that we're in, with the actual environment and ecology that we're in. And, it takes a lot of awareness and presence to be tuned in to this. And I think that's why those elemental practices are so good, because they shine a light on like, oh, okay, we want to get more connected with our watery side and the water element. Okay, great. We're going to spend more time connecting to the physical element of water, whether that's through intentional showers or finding a waterfall or putting our feet in a riverbed or skiing. Being in snow is also part of the water element. But it also means like fluid movements and surrendering, but also being connected to your potent life force and energy. And so doing, physical movements that feel like you're getting in touch with your power, but also being like fluid and flexible. So there's so many ways we can touch down on the elements and how we can infuse them into our everyday practices. So it's just this like overall like embracing of everything so that we can move through the world in a connected way and that we can be present. This is something I learned during this workshop, which was something I learned about myself by speaking out loud and talking about where I'm at with my journey, where I'm at in my life. And what came through is that I have some insecurity and some doubts around my impact and who I'm impacting and what my projects are, how many people they're reaching and how many, the analytics of it all, whether it's the Que Pasa Walaba publication I made or the stories that I put out online or, the work that I do is like digital content creation and marketing. So it's all about analytics and who you're reaching and what the feedback is and, who's being affected by what you're doing. And so I think my creative work has been impacted by that mentality of analytics and impact. And I realized yesterday that I want my impact to actually be a measurement of how present I am with every project I step into. I'll say that again. My measure of success and impact is how present I am able to be with every project I lean into. That might resonate for some people and that might not resonate for others because we are in such a system of results and profit and numbers, and it's hard to get out of that mindset. But when we're creating for ourselves, which is, I think, where all creation should start, it should be like, I want to do this. I'm choosing to do this. I'm excited about this. I'm curious about this. This is hard and I want to step further into it. I feel like that's a great place to create from. And we ultimately should lead with that curiosity and not so much do it for this. And I'm not going to lie, this has hindered me in so many ways because I've started so many little projects, Substack pages, Instagram accounts, a yoga studio years ago. I have pages of ideas for publications and collaborative creative projects, and they're all kind of like they've hit a dead end because oftentimes I am focused on, is this going to make me money? Is this going to impact anyone? Who fucking cares about it? And Is this going to, open up doorways for future projects so I can create more and be supported more in my work and blah, 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 blah. Look, those are all good questions. I don't want to wipe those questions off the table, but I also want to say that to really be thoughtful and intentional and connected to your work, it has to come from a deeper place than that. And then the impact and will all kind of evolve as it will. And Anya, in our call yesterday, she said, look, you might produce something that doesn't make a huge rippling impact right away, but 10 years from now or the next generation from now might experience what you've created, and it might resonate with someone so much that it changes their mind about something. It shifts their career direction. It sparks them to have a conversation they thought they might never be able to have, whatever. And that's worth it, vale la pena. It's worth it. And I just wanted to share that because I know we're all like so busy and so oriented with success and profit and balancing our creative lives with our spiritual lives, with our, being a householder and having to run a household and manage a family and pets and all the things. So I want to consider all of that, but also welcome in this idea that when we find ourselves creating, whether it is a business project or a creative project, I still think there's space to have this sense of curiosity of like, oh, I wonder what this will lead to, but not being so caught up with the result and instead being so present in the moment that becomes like your offering and your energy is so poured into the moment that's what fuels the project forward. And I know for a fact that I need to be better at this, and I am so interested in leaning in deeper with my projects. And this podcast is a project. It's a self-development masterclass. And I hope that it's something that I can also share with people where they also benefit from it. And it does spark conversation, and it does build a deeper connection from my seat over here to your seat, wherever you are in the world, because that is important to me, that impact, that connection. But it also isn't just about that. So my work right now is about leaning in to all the things that make me uncomfortable and all the places that I feel there's an edge and that I'm a little bit afraid to dig deeper into. Now, this comes in the form of podcasting, yes, but beyond just sitting in front of a camera and chatting, my work that I do beyond beyond sitting here in front of you now is so much time spent on the page, writing, processing, sharing and talking with friends, building relationships, connecting with the city, growing my career, figuring out what my career direction is, because I'm very much in a transition with this. And so all my work outside of this moment is pretty profound. And it's my life outside of this 1 hour. So of course there's many, many hours I'm spending not here with you. And so when I do come to sit down with you here, I want it to be as rich and meaningful and as deep as it can be. And that doesn't mean I'm just going to like pour my soul into every episode and like make it some big, heavy conversation, but it's about being so intentional about stepping into this dynamic and knowing that I'm asking these hard questions, and I'm actually going out and like digging in the dirt and getting my hands dirty and then coming here and sharing what comes up and being really vulnerable about that and being really honest about what that journey is, because one week it might look one way and the next, como explico, it will be different every week. And that's the point. The point is to be witnessed in this way. The point is to show my process and not just a result. The point is to embody what I'm speaking about. I want to come to you with an energy of I'm doing the work. And this is what it looks like this week. And this is what came up for me. And this is what I'm super scared to go deeper with. And so yeah, it feels good. It feels good to admit that there's places where I do feel like I haven't pushed the edges enough. And that is in my writing, because I have so many, again, I have a laptop filled with notes and pages of half poems and half essays and all these projects and ideas that are just not like, I haven't committed to, I haven't been able to see them through. I've been a little bit scared of what's on the other side of these poems and these exploratory writings. So I want to figure out why I haven't done that and where my like hesitation is, because I think that's where the depth lies. And or that's like where the depth of this work is beneath that line of like safety of like, oh, I'm going to just explore it to this point and then I'm going to dip out. It's like, well, what are we doing here then? Why even start the poem if you're not going to finish it, if you're not going to really flush through it? And I just know that that's important to me. And I know that other people will relate to this from the aspect of, I know there's areas in your life where you have like hesitated and haven't fully leaned into. And this could be fitness, like a physical practice that you're exploring that you're just like, oh, I'm going to stay right here because that's comfortable. But you know that you can go deeper with it. Or it could be a creative practice. It could be an artistic, visual art modality of sculpting, drawing, painting, textiles, photography, film. And where are you kind of holding the conversation in a safe place and not letting it like bloom into something deeper? And what else could it be? I mean, definitely relationships. I feel like that's something I do want to touch on quickly in this episode because it ties into this intimacy conversation. Is our relationships are so revealing and they give us such an amazing place to explore not only, each other, but, ourselves really. And like I said before, our relationships should be bringing us closer to ourselves. I feel like when there's this separation that happens, and oh my God, do you guys know what I'm talking about? When you start to lose yourself in a relationship and you're like, I'm not even connected to what I'm doing right now because I'm like fully invested in like their experience and how they perceive me and what they need. And I want to say this is different for like a family dynamic and a having kids. That's very different. I can't relate to that sort of need that someone might have of you. But I still think within a family dynamic and a nuclear family dynamic, you can still ask these questions because there's always room for you to say, where am I putting myself out and where can I claim that piece of me back? So I don't know. I think for me, so I have been kind of putting myself out there more and talking to people and being open to being pursued and not really pursuing. I'm not really, no, I want to be pursued. That's kind of where my energy is right now, is to be pursued by someone who makes me feel really safe and who kind of creates this container for us to explore each other in. My camera completely fell over, so I had to take a second. So I was just talking about when it comes to relationships, something that I'm really clear on these days is what energies are ignited within two people. I'll focus specifically on like friendships and romantic partnerships, which we'll just do it in pairs for the sake of keeping it a little more straightforward. So two people in a dynamic. Such a weird, why did I say that's so weird? I'm trying to be inclusive, because not all relationships are just two people. So that's all. I'm examining like what's ignited in the relationship. What am I pulling out in that person and what are they pulling out in me and what are we like bringing to the surface to show each other and how are we showing up in the dynamic? And recently I've had a connection that just showed me so much about myself and it was really revealing and really confronting, but in a beautiful way. It kind of made me realize like what a lover girl I really am and what a like absolute romantic I am. And that if you speak to me in poetry and, are reflective on our conversations and say things back to me that we talked about in a lovely, reflective way, like my heart melts and I'm super open and I'm just like, yes, 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 give me more of this. And like But like language and communication is one thing, but actually experiencing life with somebody and going out and like having, a moment out in the world or in the privacy of your space, those are two kind of different things, because communication through text and through conversation is like shows you one thing, but then like how they act and how you kind of synergize together is another thing. And so I'm learning that can be really connected to someone's story and like the story that they're telling you, but how they're acting and how they show up is really important. And so for me to feel like I can show up with my most like vulnerable, honest, sweet, playful, deep, sensual, embodied woman, you know, I need to feel that containment of safety and security and trust that is built through time spent together, not just affirmative texts that give you peace of mind for the day. No, I need presence IRL. And not just from romantic partnerships. I need that from my people, from my community. I'm so interested in meeting people and connecting with people that are like leaning into the conversation, that want to have deep chats, that want to ask these big questions, and that are okay with not knowing the answers and are down to just like question things and explore things. And I don't know, I feel like that's maybe a little bit hard to find, or maybe I just haven't attracted that enough. I do have some of those relationships, 100%. You know who you are, tú sabes. But I really see myself as creating a broader community of that same energy. And also with a partner who has that same presence. Because when I feel presence from someone, a man, let's just call it what it is, okay? As much as I don't really want to talk about men on this podcast. Let's talk about men on the podcast. When a man is so present and so attentive in his energy and his focus on you, it gives me all the safety in the world to be vulnerable and to share and to also support them and devote to them and just be like 100% like available and in it, and getting to do what I do best and allowing them to do what they do best, which is to lead and create this safe containment. And I've seen glimmers of that in my connections, and it's so attractive, and I'm so like, yes, that's the vibe. Let's go. But then when that energy isn't met by action and by conversations that like propel our dynamic forward, and planning things that put us on a forward path, I'm at a stage where I'm 35. I don't really have time to spend wondering if you see growth for us. Because if you don't see growth for us, then I have no business being here with you. I have no business spending my time having these loving conversations without that path forward. And it doesn't mean that I can't have wonderful experiences and passionate connections, and that it doesn't mean that every situationship has to end in the one and has to be the final person that I choose, because I actually don't really believe in that container. I think there's so much more fluidity with it all. But I do, so that being said, right, there's space to have like passionate, fun, intense connections, and for it to kind of just be that thing. And then you can say, oh my God, thank you, that was so special, and then move on to the next. But when we're talking about like really choosing somebody and really making space for them to choose us, there has to be that forward thinking and that presence, that presence met with action. So I'm really in that space. But when I write it down and I say, this is what I want in a man, this is what feels good, this is what I'm loving, this is what I'm looking forward to, I also am flipping the script. Ad lib with Liv, that's what we're here to do, rewrite the script. I flip it and I ask myself those same questions. What am I doing to put myself on that forward path of growth? What am I engaging in with myself to continue to be present with the things that matter to me? And it's honestly, it's really deep work. It's really deep questions, because I think it's easier sometimes to outsource those questions and ask the person sitting across from you, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And I really want to do that work myself first, because that's what embodiment is being the thing that you are seeking. Yeah. Being the expression that you are seeking. You know, it's not about looking so far outside. And I do know for a fact, because I've done some really amazing practices, shadow work, sensual embodiment practices, writing prompts, meditation, that has shown me that when I hold that need for myself first of like, okay, well, I need this person to be more present with me. I need more attention from this person. I need to see this, and this from this person in order to move forward. When I flip that script onto myself and embody it and do that work within myself, it starts to be reflected back to you. It just does. And it does feel quite magical when that happens. You're like, oh, I felt this before in my own body. And then to have it in 3D across from you, you know, someone really showing up in that same way that you showed up for yourself that felt so good. It's like really magical. It's really fucking magical. And it really feels like, oh, like I get to own this first and then I get to experience out here. And I love that invitation because it's so, you know, for lack of a better word, empowering. You know, it gives us that like, oh, we are the power, but it also gives us that responsibility of we are the creator of it all. So instead of like sitting around and waiting for that thing to happen or waiting for that person to come in and direct us to where we want to go and give us the love that we've been seeking, we really do have the opportunity to do it for ourselves. And so this leads me into slight redirection of the podcast. I'm going to be producing one episode every other week, but don't hold me to this. Oh my God, I'm a neurospicy girly. I might change my mind. But for now, what feels more in alignment is to not produce so much content every week, but to take my time and to be very intentional and to be very present with each podcast and each conversation and produce one every other week and to talk about the specific practices and experiences that I've had that are focused on intimacy, presence, self-devotion, sensual embodiment, how we show up in this human experience when we lead with a desire for intimacy and presence. Now, what I love about this overarching topic is that there's so much that lives underneath that. So I think it was Friday night. I don't think I went out on Friday night. And I instead was on my computer doing like a design, was designing symbols to represent the work that I want to step into more fully. And it was really fun. I sourced through all my old photos. I went online. I did a Pinterest deep dive. And I found symbols that really resonated with me and felt like a really good visual guide to kind of anchor the work that I want to move forward with. So I came up with 5 symbols. Consciousness. So I laid out the images kind of stacked on top of each other. I'll show it here in the video. So starting with the yoga pose at the bottom, that is my devotion to movement and physical self-expression and being more exploratory in my body. The heart, of course, represents the center of love, the center of it all, the heart of the matter, where I think our answers lie and our truth lives. And the design that I made, my sister pointed this out. She's like, it looks like a brain also, the way I have it kind of carved out. Didn't intentionally do that right away, but that image emerged. And it is the reminder that thinking just from our brain is limiting us from thinking from a deeper, more centered part of us, which is our heart. So kind of bringing the two together, being cerebral and also being heart-led. And the symbol of fertility, yes, this represents women and our vitality and our life force. But for me, it's also a symbol of art and history and culture, which as I've shared with you before, is a central focus of the podcast, of interweaving artist stories, referencing history and traditions across cultures, especially here in Mexico. And then the orchid flower is my reminder to be connected to the elements, always. And the mudra hand is self-expression and also the senses, the five senses. So reminding myself that to be so intimate with life, so present with the beauty and the despair that comes with life, I have this amazing portal of connection, which is through my senses, my touch, smell, sight, hearing. Also, shout out to my lovely mother, who is a hand therapist and was an occupational hand therapist for her entire career, dedicated herself to this amazing modality of healing. And she worked with the upper extremities, and the hands have always been a symbol in our household. She has sculptures of hands, glass hands, photos of hands, and it's the first thing that she always notices about a person. And so I feel very connected to hands through her. And so I have an even greater appreciation for what the hands mean and how they connect us to the world around us. So that's my symbology breakdown, and that's going to help guide the conversations of this podcast. And I just want to say thank you for tuning in. If you have stayed tuned in on month 2, thank you so much. We have so much more to talk about and so much more depth to get into. And I'm excited to see who is on board with this journey and these conversations. And I understand that it might not be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. I'm seeking authentic connection and community and finding resonance with this community in however shape that takes. I'm looking forward to it. But again, it's not about that as much as it's about showing up with full presence and full devotion to each episode and each week and each hour of my life, and reminding you to do the same and inviting you to do the same through prompts and conversation. Please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, like and comment anything, everything. It means so much, and it goes a long way to keep things moving and to know who's watching and who I can connect with here. If you're on Apple, please like and leave a review and a 5 stars if that feels comfortable for you. It's really easy and it makes a big difference for me. So thank you. And if you're on any of the other podcasts, I think there's a feature too to follow, to download, to like, rate. Anything that you can do to engage is really important. And another gentle reminder is to support your friends' projects. That's been a theme for me as well. I've seen multiple people talk about this online, people talk about it with me in person, and I really want to emphasize that our friends are doing cool shit, and we don't need to be so tuned into the celebrity rhetoric all the time. I'm not saying you are. I'm not calling you out. Don't worry. Also, I'm tuned into that as well. So maybe I'm calling myself out. But as much as we are tuned into like the news and the media, whether it's celebrity media, reality TV shows, or literally the news, just remember that your friends are doing cool shit. They're starting projects, they're making clothes, they're writing books, they're making music, and our support is integral for their success. And why would we not want them to be the most successful? We love them. So let's support them. So give me a like, okay? Just like me. No, but I love you. Make sure to subscribe to get notified when the next episode drops. The next episode with Adlib with Liv will be about how we integrate the mind, the heart, and the emotions into our projects or our practices. The invitation is to get out of the mind a little bit and to drop back into the body, back into our feels, back into a more embodied and felt experience so we can create from a more whole perspective. So I can't wait to share that with you. Te amo. Abrazos de Mexico.